right.
Wall Street from there.
Okay, this time I'm gonna call the meeting to order. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna turn it over to Mike Duck, who'll do the introductions, and we'll move from there. Mike?
Yeah, thanks. As I was telling Janet here, it's no secret that flooding is an issue in Shadowmoss Plantation and has been for years. And as I was telling Janet just a few minutes ago, we were in St. Louis, Missouri. We went to the South Carolina, Missouri football game. We won that game during the 2015 thousand-year flood. And we were in the hotel, and on the TV was an image of a guy in a kayak. And it said, these images are coming from Shadowmoss, South Carolina. National news, like it was in town. And that guy happened to be on my street, still shadow, down near Wolf, where, that's one of the two really bad hot spots, the other being Bridge 6. So, I'm gonna turn this over to Dean Riegel, our city councilman, and if anyone thinks that Dean doesn't care about us, you're wrong. He cares a great deal about us. He's a great city councilman, and he's going to introduce some folks here from the stormwater department with the city of Charleston. We're told that Mayor Tecklenburg is on the way. He was at another meeting, so he's running a few minutes late. But I'm going to turn this over to Dean, and we're going to hopefully hear about solutions to the flooding issues in Shadowmoss Plantation. By the way, that is a city map of all the ponds in the neighborhood. We are, anybody can look at that if you care to. We're working with J.P. Ringer. He runs the golf course because he is responsible for half the ponds in the neighborhood. HOA is responsible for the other half. So we're going to co-op and work with JP, and we'll have a request for proposals and hire one company to take care of all the ponds in the neighborhood and clear out all the pigweed and alligator weed and all that, hopefully, and that could have an impact, you guys tell me if that has an impact on flooding in the neighborhood, the ill repair that our ponds have fallen into. So, without further ado, Dean Riegel.
Thank you, Michael, for that wonderful introduction. And as many of you know, I've been on the City Council for several terms now, past Mayor Pro Tem, great City of Charleston, served as Charleston Water Commissioner for 6 years while I've been on council. Currently chairman of the Human Resource, Pension and Benefits Council or Committee of the City of Charleston, which is important because that's all of our employees, firefighter, our sworn officers, police, and certainly everyone else that picks up your garbage every day and repairs your potholes and does those kind of things. Flooding has been a problem in West Ashley for years. It's nothing just happened in the last 24 months. And if you've read any of my speeches or any of my talks or any of my things on council, we cannot continue to allow developers to fill in our marshes, our wetlands, our drainage ditches, our stormwater, especially the marshes and swamps. Those are Mother Nature's retention ponds. And I get calls all the time, well, Councilman, my backyard didn't flood 10 years ago. It probably didn't. But you didn't have the widening of Bees Fair, you didn't have all the additional development, the homes, the growth, the traffic, the things that you have today. I was the only councilman that voted nay, that's nay, on the Long Savannah project. I don't know how many of you know what the Long Savannah project is. It's going in kind of above Grand Oaks, 4,500 new rooftops. 4,500 new rooftops. And how do you put 4,500 new rooftops, just make, 2 cars per unit, 9,000 more cars on West Ashley roads without any additional infrastructure. Widening East Ferrymore, widening of McConnell. 61, we just can't do anything with it because of the nature of its history. 17, Main Road. We have to put a stop to this constant developing. I'm going to call it overdevelopment. As many of you know, earlier this year I was successful in getting the city to implement a building permit, new building permit moratorium in the Church Creek watershed based on a 100-year program. And also part of that was this moratorium stays in place until we get a handle from this wonderful engineering firm that we've contracted. And there were several that contracted, put in bids, RFPs. I was on the vetting committee. And you know, this group, this Western group, is really, really a good group. And I'm not mistaken, I think your parent company or affiliate in Netherlands or something out, is that way? Yeah.
One of the team members has an office there.
Yeah, so if they don't know how to build dikes and things in the Netherlands, and they're literally living on the seafloor behind those dikes, I don't think anybody else can. Feel free, questions. They're going to take whatever you say as input back, continue the planning process. Didn't want to, I'll introduce, before I have to introduce my good friend Laura Cabiness, many of you know, professional engineer. She's a city director of Public Works, Stormwater. It's one of the reasons we're a little late tonight. We had that meeting tonight along with real estate I had to serve on. And I don't know if you're going to say any words, we're going to leave it all to Ron. Robert, so without further ado, I want to introduce Robert Horner. He's Vice President and Program Manager for Weston and Sampson. And to share with us not only the plans for the future, but more importantly to the people in this room, and more importantly to me as well, is what are we going to do about the current situation, this current stormwater outflow, and how do we mitigate that, and how do we not have a panic attack every time Bill Walsh, our good friend, forecasts a rainy weekend. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Robert. It's all yours, and I'm going to sit here and listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Riegel.
Thank you, sir.
Once again, my name is Bob Horner. I'm Regional Manager for Weston and Sampson Engineering. And we're the lead on the team that was selected to evaluate the Church Creek drainage basin along with our other team members. I've got here with me tonight some other folks that are helping out with the outreach aspect of the project. And then what I want to do is introduce them, tell you what the scope of work is that we're working on, what we're charged with accomplishing, how we're going to do that, some of the expectations that I think that we'll learn or realize as we're working our way through the project, what our schedule is, and then we're going to start passing around some comment sheets that you can all write down a few comments on tonight. That also have my contact information and some other folks' contact information that you can feel free to communicate with us about isolated drainage issues that we might not know about that certainly are part of our efforts to address the drainage in the overall Church Creek Basin as well. So tonight here is Adrian Williams with Atlantic South Consulting. Adrian's a Citadel grad. I've known him for a very long time, and as I mentioned, he's helping us with the public outreach portion. He has with him Tiffany Williams as well as Juliana Torres. So thank y'all for being here. Thank everyone for being here. What our team is made up of Weston and Sampson, which is the company that I work for. We're an engineering firm of about 580 professionals. Offices up and down the East Coast, here in Charleston and in Columbia and South Carolina. Public works engineers, infrastructure, drainage, water, wastewater, all types of municipal infrastructure and roads. So we have a really good understanding of municipal infrastructure as well as drainage. We also have on the team members from DHI Group, and that was the group that you mentioned earlier that has offices worldwide, and they focus on water, all things water. Urban stormwater drainage is one of their specialty areas, and that's kind of what we're dealing with in this project. As we work our way through the project, we're charged with a scope that includes a lot of different things. Number one is to review everything that's been done so far. Projects that have been done so far, to review their effectiveness, to make sure it's consistent with study recommendations from past studies, recommendations from the past that maybe have not yet been implemented, to make sure they're the right thing to do, and to make sure that they're spending money in the right areas to help out with drainage, and to make recommendations associated with future capital improvements that may be necessary to help keep flooding areas from flooding in the future. Now, how are we going to do that? In the past, this effort has been done by not only certain input from the community, but by using a hydraulic model, hydraulic computer model. It takes into account all of the topography, the terrain, the elevations, the roads, the impervious areas, the sizes and lengths and diameters of all the storm drain culverts, and the shape characteristics of all the channels that are scattered throughout the basin. This also takes into account the outfall impacts associated with tidal variations in Church Creek, because the outfall, most of the outfalls drain into the Church Creek, which is, as you all know, tidally affected. So as we continue to review the hydraulic model, the city's made the decision to upgrade that model to a new hydraulic model. So we're currently going through the hydraulic model and getting all of the information updated from the old model into the new model. What that is going to allow us to do is to run several scenarios based on different rainfall events. We can mimic or model rainfall events that have taken place in the past based on rainfall data that we can get from NOAA and from the data that's collected in this area, at the airport, various other data that's in databases that we have available to us. We use that to calibrate our model and make sure the model performs the way the actual system performs. Now, Church Creek Basin is about 5,000 acres. It's very dynamic. There's always changes taking place with weather, with the changing of the seasons, with leaves and debris falling into the wetland areas, get caught up in the system that Laura takes care of, that her maintenance guys take care of. It's very challenging to keep everything perfect in that system. So our hydraulic model will build in certain characteristics that closely mimic the performance of the actual system as we begin to move forward and start to use that model to evaluate imaginary projects. By that I mean projects that we dream up, that we feel, using our judgment, would make a difference or improve the conditions in the basin by maintaining water levels where they should be, preventing flooding. We're right in the middle of that hydraulic model development process, that hydraulic model upgrade process. Councilman.
I'd like to introduce you, Mike.
Yes.
This is, Rodney, if you stand up, this is Councilman Rodney Williams.
Good afternoon.
He represents District 2. And Mayor Tecklenburg just texted me, he is on the way. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for being here also. As I mentioned, we're planning on using that hydraulic model to evaluate alternatives and to determine the effectiveness of the alternatives that we can plan and put into place in the future to help prevent flooding. So our objective of this study is to evaluate those past recommendations and combine those with recommendations for future projects that the city can then implement to maintain water levels below flooding conditions in the basin. Our schedule. And Laura's driving hard. She's not letting me off the hook on this. We're to have recommendations, preliminary recommendations, by the first week in October. The moratorium ends, I believe, 1st of November, right around the 1st of November. So it gives the city some time to review our recommendations and use those to make decisions on how to move forward with the moratorium at that time.
It's right around election time, so we need that.
November 28th.
It's November 28th. Okay, so the moratorium ends November 28th. So, as I mentioned, we're on track using the model to mimic past events, to use the model to predict future events without improvements and with improvements that we can come up with that we feel would be in the best interest of keeping water levels in the Church Creek drainage basin where they need to stay, preventing flooding. All right. So I think one other aspect of our study, our scope of our, or two other aspects of our scope of work, are to review the current development standards that the city has in place that affect stormwater. So we're going to be taking a hard look at those. We're going to be combining the knowledge that we have, the knowledge from DHI, the global perspective, trends around the world and some of the most heavily developed areas, benchmarking on some of those concepts and some of those ideas, picking the best parts of those maybe that may be appropriate for implementation here, and using those to help guide some recommendations associated with development that'll help out with the storm drainage aspects. One other member on the team that I want to mention also is we commissioned a member of the staff of NOAA to be on our team as well. Why did we do that? Well, we have recognized, and many of you may have also, that the rainfall events now maybe just don't seem like they did 20, 30 years ago. We suspected that, and our team member with NOAA has confirmed that. He's providing access to us for volumes and volumes of meteorological data that confirms that the frequency and the duration and the intensity of a lot of the storms that we see, that aspect is changing. We have, it seems like, more frequent rainfall events that are of higher intensity. In other words, what would be considered a 10-year storm 10 years ago now might be a little bit different. We don't want to base that on theory, though. We want to base that on facts and data. So we asked Ned Gardner with NOAA to be a team member of us to make sure we have full access to that NOAA data and make sure we understand that data fully as we interject that data into stormwater design standards going forward at the conclusion of this study. What can you expect from here on out? Our team is going to continue working to meet the schedule that Laura has put in place. We anticipate meeting with groups just like this in every neighborhood in the Church Creek Basin. We've had several of those meetings already. We're meeting with individuals if they have a special area of concern or a problem that they want us to know about, because in my mind, we need to address two issues, and that's one, the conveyance issue. That's moving stormwater big volumes in large assets out of the basin efficiently. We also need to address the small, isolated drainage issues where you might have a situation where you're only affecting 8 or 10 houses, but there's something associated with the system that's preventing that water from getting to the conveyance system. And that causes a lot of problems also. So I won't feel like we're successful until we address both of those issues throughout the basin. We're going to fight really hard to make sure we do that. We're going to listen to everybody's comments. Adrian or Juliana is going to pass around a sheet that has something you can fill out tonight. If you don't want to mess with it tonight, take it home, think about it, write it up, or send an email to me or somebody else at our office later. I'd like to recognize the mayor. He just walked in.
Good evening, everyone. Don't let me interrupt you. Keep on.
Thank you. Thank you. So, once again, your comments are very important to us. We want to hear every one of them. I personally will look at every one of them. We're going to create a database and share that with our team members. We'll incorporate those comments into a hotspot map, make sure that we have all those comments that are accounted for or addressed in some manner as we move into the capital project phase recommendations at the end of this study. I think that's all I have to say. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody might have. Yes?
Oh, front one on. With all the donut holes in city zoning, does it matter that the water comes off Rebecca's yard and she's in the county and flows onto my yard that's in the city? Or is it just all being incorporated?
That's a really good question. Excuse me, something that I failed to mention was also part of our scope of work is to evaluate the method now that the city and the county use for collaborating on development. So I'm not real sure what that looks like yet, but we're putting effort into that, and we're going to have some type of measures to make sure that the MS4s are talking to each other when it comes to a drainage project. Yes, hang on, we're getting everybody.
I see lots of modeling, lots of planning for like 20 years. I don't see any capital improvements. So nothing really changes, we just get more water.
I think that's a real good point also. I think that the reason that we're here tonight, the reason that we're doing this study is that the city has made some capital improvements. Now, obviously maybe that's not enough. Maybe combined with the crazy amount of development that has been going on and the changes in weather patterns, there's obviously the need for more. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So I think that, in looking at the projects that we're planning going forward, I think there's a specific interest on solving these problems. I know I've been given marching orders in the mayor's office to make sure we come up with projects to fully address the technical aspects of this. And I think the mayor is here tonight, and he can answer questions about the city's commitment to funding those improvements.
Whether it be milestone charts showing capital improvements, every mission.
We can certainly develop that going forward.
There needs to be something tangible moving forward.
Oh, I agree. That's a really good comment. Yes?
My questions are simple. Why does our neighborhood flood, and what are we doing to fix it?
Okay, let me address that. I can't fully answer all those questions.
Just two.
I can say what I think right now, but that's to be proven by the final results of the study. I think that one of the main issues is not enough downstream conveyance capacity on the large conveyance system that drains the system. I think that we've got a lot of assets in that conveyance system that are at a very, very low elevation that is affected by the tide. And I think that in the past, stormwater design standards have taken into account permeability of the soil in certain areas And I think changes in the weather pattern combined with the increased amount of development contribute to the fact that a lot of these ponds and stormwater systems aren't allowed the time they need to stage down after a rain event in order to create storage the way they're designed for the next consecutive storm. That's what I suspect right now. We're going to be able to validate all those once our modeling work is completed.
And the solution?
The solution is going to be a combination of improvements to existing assets, construction or installation of future assets to improve the conveyance capacity and to somehow accommodate or overcome impacts to the system associated with the boundary conditions set up by the tidal outfalls.
Like bigger culverts, for example.
For example, certainly. Yes.
Is there a stop of maybe something in M61 over here that's blocking the water from going to the river? Because the water from by Bilo's and those apartments come back this way under number 5 golf course into Ripplemore and flood Ripplemore and walk go back.
I'm not specifically familiar with how that operates or under an event, but write that on a comment sheet and get that to me, and we'll fully evaluate that issue.
Yeah, because it should be going the other way, it's coming back this way.
A part of our scope of work, just one more comment, involves taking the hydraulic model that we have and looking at every asset that's in that model and going and visiting the site to make sure we understand fully that that asset that's in the model now is in the ground the way it's represented in the model, and that the condition of it is the way that the modeler set it up. Is it in good condition? Is it silted in? Do we need to put a red flag on it for future maintenance? Is it designed abnormally? Are there other features about it that affect the hydraulic capacity of it? We want to make sure that issues like that are fully represented in the model. So looking at all of them on the ground, making sure they're represented in the model is a step that we're doing. Yes?
I'm happy to hear that you said that you're going to look at the neighborhoods as far
Right.
as the
I saw you
development.
shaking your head.
Yeah, because my house alone changed from C to AE and was a major hit with that 2000
Right.
because of the neighborhood next door. I didn't have a problem with it until that neighborhood was built.
Okay.
The minute it was built, I couldn't leave my house on rainy days because I had a pond on my street and my car couldn't get through. And it was from there.
I understand. I've heard that.
So it's not going to be,
I've heard
so
that
you are
most.
going to fix that.
Put that on a comment card. Make sure I understand your address, and we'll incorporate that as well as other localized
I
issues.
understand it's the basin too, but.
Yeah, no, we got, like I
Can't
said,
blame the basin.
like I said, we got the small problems
Yeah.
and we got the big problems. We got to take care of both of them. Yes.
And this is kind of directed to Councilman Dean and Laura. The current project that's going on at the corner here, what's going on with that? How does that affect? He just said that's a water line. Is that a water line?
Charleston Public Water.
That's,
It is a water line project.
Where they tore up the walking thing and nothing's
Yeah.
happened to them?
Well, we sure were thinking it was some sort of a drain line,
Yeah.
a drain line coming in somewhere, And then number two,
Let me respond real quick.
Yeah.
When I was a commissioner of Charleston Public Water, we approved that to increase the volume coming out of this area because all the building development. Kind of wish I wouldn't have done that. But anyway, that's fresh water that's come all the way under the Ashen River over here to feed the development. Yep.
and in that second question, going back to the pond issue, at the end of Jerome Court, where this gentleman lives and this gentleman lives, that pond is silted over and it's owned by a private individual.
That's Pierre Pond area that you've heard so much about. That's where the gentleman.
That's part of my problem.
could you make sure you
That's a big,
communicate
big
that?
one right there.
Make sure you communicate that.
Yes, sir.
Either on a form tonight or an email that's listed on that form. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm speaking with two neighbors, and you maybe already addressed this somewhere down the line, but they're talking about the basin actually is down at the railroad track, down at Glen McConnell. The water used to flow through Glen McConnell over into an area over there, a swamp, whatever.
Lake Donovan.
And also the same way with the railroad track. I'm wondering if that's not what John's mentioned, maybe that's where it's being dammed, making, forcing it back this way instead of actually letting it flow on where it should.
We're carefully evaluating that particular aspect of the project. That's, you know, all of the crossings that cross the railroad track are key locations. I'll just say that. They're key locations. They're outfalls for most of the drainage basin. So how those existing culverts affect the performance of the rest of the system is a very crucial part of what we're evaluating.
Are there culverts involved with Glen McConnell, or is that just actually a dam?
The Glen McConnell is, I'm going by information that I recall when it was built, and by what I've been told, when Glen McConnell was built across the existing road, it was like a dirt road or a highway across Lake Donovan. When it was originally constructed, there, I think, was an outfall there at one time that drained into the marsh on the other side because of Stoner. So, looking at how that may affect the performance of the lake at Forest Lakes is certainly part of what we're going to be evaluating when we get the model working and validating its performance and calibrated based on comparing the response of the model to past significant rainfall events that we have information. So that's one of the things that we're doing.
Well, if I could interject, the current and existing system of outflow we have in place, I think has been compromised over the years by silt, the trees, the various things that have fallen in there. And Mike talks about ripples more when stormwater, Laura's group went in there and cleaned that out. There was a marked or significant improvement, Mike, please correct me, in that, much like other streets in Shadowmoss. Let me know so I can send stormwater in. But you know, we haven't had a problem there, but I think there's a lot of those spots. Bridgepoint, that problem there, those homes should never have been built. We've got those hopefully condemned under FEMA, and we got to get the money to those people for FEMA. So that's a whole another issue we're dealing with. Thank you.
Right. Yes. We'll get to everybody. I'm sorry. Just keep raising your hand.
This involves the bigger problem, which affects all these small problems we're talking about. One of the city engineers, and I'm very thankful for that, spent a lot of time with me a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the stormwater and filling in the marshes. And if I understood what he said correctly, I've developed golf courses and stuff years ago, and always had to go through the coastal council, which obviously doesn't exist anymore.
Well, it does in a different form.
Okay, but he mentioned that the Corps of Engineers are now making some of these decisions, and then the city has to figure out how to deal with the problems. Am I correct in that?
The overall, yes, you are correct. The overall process for filling in wetlands is really controlled by two entities. You mentioned the South Carolina Coastal Council. That entity became part of DHEC, and now they're called OCR, Ocean and Coastal Resources Management. So you still have to permit any kind of fill that's not what's called a jurisdictional wetland, which is what the Corps governs. You still have to permit those non-jurisdictional wetland fills through OCR. And can you fill wetlands? Can you get a permit to do that? Yes. There are a lot of requirements that justify filling, like having a limited access maybe. They make you buy mitigation credits based on the quality of the wetland. So in other words, if you fill an acre of wetlands over here, if it was a high-quality wetland, you may have to contribute to a mitigation bank that created 2 or 3 acres of wetlands over here. So there is a process. That filling of an area in a drainage basin that's challenged might not be the best approach because it, it certainly creates or takes away from that basin's ability to mitigate drainage surges on back-to-back events by taking out part of storage in the basin. But there is still a process for that. The Corps of Engineers, as I mentioned, regulates filling of jurisdictional wetlands, which are federal wetlands that are more characterized as those that are connected to water bodies. In other words, not an isolated freshwater pond or bay area, but something that's connected to a drainage corridor that, if you can imagine, a 10-year rain event gets water in it, and that water moves through a wetland area, that would typically be classified as a jurisdictional wetland. Yes?
Just to follow up on the question of who governs our wetlands, what can we expect our local representatives to do to put a stop to filling in the wetlands and overdeveloping our areas such that our houses are not flooded and condemned? What can we expect our representatives to do?
I'll tackle that question.
Okay.
As chairman of the public forum, that's a question that we had just about a week ago. The question remains in the future, can our city do an ordinance that prevents any building in any wetlands? That's something that we're going to explore looking into the future. Maybe there could be some areas where we can set an ordinance that does not allow any building in wetlands. And that's something that we're going to have to look at, and that's something that Laura talked about at one of our city councilman retreat. Good question, because right now the Corps does that. Should there be any building in any wetland? This is an issue all over the East Coast, and we're going to explore that. It's a good point. Could we have an ordinance that would have the power to do that?
I have a question to add to that.
Yep.
Whenever a builder comes in and gets a permit to build, don't they have to get approval through SCE&G for power and the water companies for water lines?
Yes, well, Laura, you could touch it. I don't know, you have to have all those
Well, it's
permissions.
not, I mean, they have to work with those entities to provide the water. They have to do
Because somewhere down the line, couldn't someone say, no, we're not going to permit that?
only if there's a law that supports that.
Right.
People have rights to develop their property, so you have to have a law in place that controls it. So typically that's zoning and densities and those kinds of things, or with urban growth boundaries. So I think here is where we have to look at some of those things too, not just the physical improvements and the capital projects, but also what does this area look like on build out, and that's part of your scope too, is to say, okay, what does this area look like on build out, and how do we manage stormwater and flooding related to that build out?
And I think to answer this young lady's question, I think we're looking aggressively at more stringent restrictions on stormwater. We got to do something. And what we got ain't working. And that's part of the process we're looking at, as Councilman Williams just said. We got to get a handle on this. Enough is enough. All right, sorry about that.
Get to him, and I'll come right back to you, okay? Yes, sir.
Before I moved into this area, I had my bacon saved by government stream gauge, where it was rising, and went, okay, it's time to move my cars out of low ground, and they didn't get flooded. To my surprise, when I did move into this area, Church Creek doesn't have a stream gauge. Furthermore, there are no plans by the state of South Carolina to put something in that area. I called up USGS, and they went, nope, they're not on it. I got the full list of them. How do you know?
Let me stop right there. I'm not interrupting. Let me just stop. The city has just recently installed 2 tide gauges in the Church Creek Basin. That you can go to the website and look at the data that's continuously fed into that database. If you,
How recent? When?
within the last 2 months, 3 months, very recent. So if you
Will you be plugging that into the national network because it's not there
It's
yet?
not a part of the national network, but we can possibly somehow figure out maybe how to link that up with the USGS data.
Right,
Maybe.
right.
That seems reasonable to me.
Where do you find it?
It is on the City of Charleston's website. If you go to departments, stormwaters, keep scrolling down, it takes a little bit of diligence. Stormwater, underneath that, there's another link to data. Hit that, there's another link to various, like, about 12 different categories. And it's on that page. If you can't find it, send me an email, I'll send you a link.
So if you would you commit to talking to the people at USGS?
Sure.
Because
I'll do that right now. I can do that.
And then, getting them to, giving them the data, because they were very clear when I talked to them, that if there was a stream gauge, they would be happy.
I'm sure they'll
Unlike the
incorporate.
city, I would bet that Google and all the rest of the search engines, get that quickly and you can find it a lot easier.
I'm sure if we talk to USGS, they'll be more than happy to create a link to the data the city's collecting now. They love data. So, and we've got a member on our team who can help us accomplish that also. Ned Gardner with USGS. Thank you, that's a good comment. All right, who did you got a question, Now, I'm not forgetting you, I saw your hand up a minute ago. Go ahead.
When we had our very first meeting after the 1,000-year flood.
Right.
And Laura was there and quite a lot of experts, I consider city experts.
Okay.
They basically gave us a gloom and doom.
Okay.
That we built all of this in the middle of a wetland, and there was very little that could be done.
Quickly. Okay.
Okay, now are we to the point 2 years later to where we are beginning to see a light at the end of the tunnel, to where maybe there's a way that we can drain the lake behind my house?
I think that's the whole object of this effort that we're being charged with, is to figure out the ways to mitigate flooding.
How long will it take for the bodies of water?
How long will it take?
5 years.
It's not going to happen tomorrow,
It took
okay?
2 years just to get to you guys.
I know.
I'm happy you're here.
I'm in control of one thing, and that's when we finish this study and provide recommendations. Okay? Right?
Those are due October, 1st of October, right?
Yeah, so we're, our study's going to be finished in October. I don't know what all the recommendations are going to be that come out of that, but what we've been charged with are developing recommendations that, in our engineering judgment, are the most economical and the most effective. And it's going to be, a part of the citizens to support whatever the city has to do in order to fund the implementation of those recommendations. Is that a fair statement? Pretty fair. Okay. So that's all I can commit to, is finishing this study on time, and then we'll have to move forward at that time.
You got a lot of ground to cover in a month and a half.
We do. I understand that. We're not just now starting. We got a little bit of a head start, so we'll get there.
Well, we've been working on our homes ever since then.
I understand. I understand. I share your pain.
We've got some conduct homes after 3 months. That's what happens.
All right, you and you. All right, hang on one second. You go ahead, I'm going to cut you
I
off.
live across the 17th fairway. I see D. Horton building houses. When they put them in, they bring in 10 or 15 truckloads of dirt.
Right.
And raise everything.
Right.
And the water flows back over toward me. How do they get permits when they're affecting other people? It's just the last bill stays dry. That shouldn't be that way.
I agree. In order to get a permit to do a subdivision in the city, I'm assuming that's in the city, right? They have to develop a drainage model for each individual project that is submitted. And part of the stormwater requirements require to show where all your stormwater runoff is going and how you're handling it. Most projects, unless something gets by the review process, they're required to contain their stormwater and run it through a water quality basin at least, or control the perimeter runoff of the swale that takes that stormwater somewhere that it does not create an adverse impact on the adjacent property.
Doesn't happen now.
Well, put that particular case in an email and send it to me, and that'll be one of the things that we look at, one of the areas that we look at. You know, when we are reviewing or modifying the stormwater design standards that the city has when we move forward, as well as taking those issues into account during our recommendation phases. All right, is that fair? Okay. Who else?
A large percentage of our storm drains lie on state roads, so in order to do this project, we're going to need buy-in and cooperation with the SCDOT.
Correct. That's a very accurate statement, because they have so many right-of-ways throughout the basin and so many drainage assets underneath many of those roadways. So, you know, coordination and collaboration with the information gathering phase as well as the capital improvements phase, just to make sure they're aware that we're recommending that something in there right away may change as a part of a capital improvement as part of what we're doing.
Bob, if I could interject, John, we're fortunate enough tonight to have Miss Lin Bennett. She represents South Carolina House Seat number 114. She lives in Shadowmoss, and she's very attuned to these floodings, and she's done an awful lot to help us. Another dignitary, Al Trigo, across the way, Al's HOA president of Hickory Hills. So got a lot of good contacts here tonight.
Great.
Thank you, Bob.
That's great. Okay.